Hi there, welcome to BSF Recovery Team. Now guess what we got in the mail today? A little package. So that means I think we're gonna, okay, go ahead, open it up. Package is from Cobra Transmission, and it should be the new collar for the transfer case. So we can finish with part 2 of our transfer case fix for the cheap trail Jeep. And just in time too, because we have a private event, club members only, this weekend. Yep, that looks like the right one, and it's in better shape too. Let's take a closer look. Remember on our first video, we showed you that our original one was nicked up pretty good here. And what that does is that goes in here on these splines and goes in here to our planetary differential. Remember, this is a full-time or a part-time case. And with the planetary differential, the two shafts can spin at different speeds. And then when the collar is pulled out, it locks up, so the two shafts have to spin at the same speed. And because it's a shift on the fly, it can come out a little ways and not lock up. The reason for that is, I'll show you. With a shift on the fly transfer case, the shift fork here doesn't actually move with the lever or the shaft. The shaft moves and applies spring pressure to the fork, the shift fork that shifts that collar. So what can happen is you can shift the lever and it's not fully engaged in the transfer case. And then if you stomp on the throttle a little too quick, what happens is that collar doesn't get a chance to engage and messes up the teeth on the tip of it. And once the teeth are messed up, then it doesn't like to slide in like it's supposed to. So now with the new collar, we should be fine. We just have to remember that you don't want to stomp on the throttle just after you shift it into four-wheel drive. You want to move the vehicle a little bit first. Before we put the transfer case back together, we got to clean off as much of the old gasket or Permatex that we can. And we usually do that using a razor blade. You can use a razor blade like this. The biggest thing is you don't want to gouge this aluminum up. You want to keep the aluminum nice and smooth. So when you're using the razor blade, the best way is at a 90-degree angle and scrape. That way you don't gouge up the aluminum. Okay, with the gasket cleaned off, we'll take a little air pressure here and we'll blow out some of the silicone pieces. Then we're gonna wipe down the surface with some brake clean. We're almost ready to assemble it, but first, this collar has to go on the shift fork. So, our shift collar has to go on to our shift fork. The shift fork rides in this groove right here. And when the shaft is through the center of it, you can't slide it onto the shift fork. Therefore, we have to install it into this half first. Now, remember that the teeth, the outside teeth, go towards or into that planetary differential that's in the other half of the case. So we need to install it with the teeth towards the back. Make sure that you don't drop out the little plastic wear blocks on the shift fork as you do this. Okay, now it's also a good time to put our magnet back in. That goes specifically right here. We're almost ready to put the other half back on, but what we're going to do is we're going to apply our gasket or our silicone to this half of the transfer case, mainly because we're going to be handling the other half, and the tricky part is getting it up in there and all of these lined up and the splines lined up so our shaft goes through and everything goes back together.
Okay, now for the hard part.
Now, before you assemble the two halves, you want to make sure that your alignment pins or dowel pins, one here and one over here, are intact and in place. Now we'll take this underneath the truck and see if we can get it together without messing up the gasket.
Our new collar, you can get all the splines to line up. Like that. Then we start a couple of bolts.
Okay, now it's ready for you to tighten all the bolts up. That's good. Okay, next step is we're going to put the front drive shaft yoke on. But before we do, we want to make sure that our rubber washer is there that seals underneath the nut. Is our rubber washer there?
Yeah.
Okay, now we can slide the yoke on.
Okay.
Now, before we put the nut on, we want to put a little Loctite inside the threads on the nut.
Okay.
Okay, now we can snug it up with the impact. That's good. We've locked the transfer case into low range, and the transmission is in park. To hold it from rotating, we have a torque wrench set at 100 foot-pounds. That's what our torque is. So go ahead and torque it to 100 foot-pounds. All right, that's 100 foot-pounds. Now we can reinstall the front drive shaft. Getting close. Next step is to put the rear drive shaft in.
Alright.
Okay.
That's up.
So you can take the tape off without dropping the caps off of the U-joint. Rotate it to line up the caps into the yoke.
Okay. Got it.
You want to make sure that each cap is underneath this little tab right here. And grab your U-joint straps and your bolts.
Alright.
Now, that clamp that we took off of the rubber boot, that gets replaced with a zip tie.
Okay.
Pull it tight. Clip it off.
Yeah. Got it.
Okay, last step to take the fill plug out and fill it full of fluid.
Oh.
Okay, put your plug in. That's good. Well, our cheap trail Jeep is back together and just in time for the weekend. Should we go try it out?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, looks like the four-wheel drive works. Thanks for watching, BSF Recovery Team. Keep wheeling, stay safe out there, and maybe we'll see you in the woods. You made it. Four-wheel drive works.